Cold-hearted deliverance is what he's looking for at the moment. And he turns every single pedal as if indeed he was born to do it. Super win for Romain Gregoire, takes the day.
If you've got anything left in the tank, and this man's clearly got plenty, he's left them behind. Almeida at the line, brilliant work.
That was a good
Nobody
win.
around him. What a
Ready for this?
performance that was. Quinn Simmons has just...
Yeah, not brilliant.
Almeida has to find yet more time. Still got 1,700 metres to go. And he's going to sprint for the line because he wants the margin. When will he sit up? He finally allows himself to appreciate the crowd's cheers. Onley's in the lead. Almeida, can he possibly get back at him? He's going to charge into this gap, try and nick it out the line. He looks
Oscar.
up for a second. Comes up on the inside right now. It's going to be on the throw. Oh my goodness, Onley just takes it. Oh, and it looks like Mayos is going to have the fun here. That was absolutely outstanding. Oh, Almeida's going to get it on the line. I think it's going to be on the throw between the pair of them. What amazing stuff this is as it goes to Almeida. Race of truth, and the truth is that João Almeida has been brilliant. João Almeida, not to be denied, not for a second time. It doesn't matter how you knock me down, I'm coming back at you. Beautiful victory for Almeida.
So, Matt, Oscar Onley, what a superstar, eh?
He did a nice job, eh?
Yeah.
It was, yeah, really, really good Tour de Suisse. After coming straight from altitude camp as well, so I think he'll be pretty happy with that.
I'm sure you probably weren't that surprised, were you?
No, I think he's preparing for the Tour, but we also had Tour de Suisse was a goal. So it was like, we wanted him to come in good shape. So he did 3 weeks in Tenerife. Had a break before that block after kind of the start of the season, and yeah, he after his third place, I was thinking, okay, shape's good. He wanted more, yeah, and then a second and a first, and then a podium also is really nice in the Tour de Suisse.
Right, here's a question for you. You see this with a lot of teams now. If you've got a rider like Oscar, who is capable of like top 10, maybe top 5 if everything goes perfectly for him.
At the Tour de France.
At the Tour de France, but he's got 2 or 3 stages probably that it can win. What's his focus? Because it's so, when we watch it, I get so frustrated with riders, not frustrated with them, but the way that you'll just see year after year after year is so many riders are in that bubble of GC riders. But if you look at them and you go, oh God, if we could just let them lose time and just let them lose.
Do you have a plan yet?
Yeah, we have a plan.
I
hope we do.
Sorry. 10 days away from the Tour de France. Have a plan yet? Like a development one.
Yeah, we have a plan. I wrote it this morning.
Back of an napkin.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, isn't it? Because you have to, like, obviously for a guy like Oscar, 22 years old, like, does he try and hold a GC where he can learn a lot? But then you also get suppressed because, like, we see now the top end of that GC is so strong. Are you ready to break into that? Do you want to hold on to that? Or do you actually, like you say, do you want to let him free? And you can still get a top 20 on the GC when you drop 10 minutes and then you go in a good breakaway that's allowed to go. But then again, that all depends on who's in the yellow jersey at that moment.
He's such an exciting talent because it's not just his results, but when you look at that stage win that he took at the Tour de Suisse, the Queen stage for a start, in a 2-up sprint against João Almeida. I mean, that was phenomenal, wasn't it? Almeida, by the way, his race, I mean, it was remarkable, wasn't it?
About time.
He's had quite a good season, to be fair.
He's had quite a good season, but whenever he gets on the big stage, Giro, Tour, Vuelta, whatever he is, he's always something wrong. And it's like, what was old mate's name that was at the Giro that...
Del Toro?
No, the other one that got off. Ayuso.
One Ayuso. Yeah.
I think with them two is like, they're the promised GC riders,
Yeah.
but for like the GC and where they're employed to do the big GC results, i.e. the Giro or the Vuelta, not the Tour, 'cause that's Tadej's, they never quite can step up. And it's always those little bits. When I say about time, for me, they should be winning those races. Like, to win those races, you have to win those races to be able to win a Grand Tour.
Yeah.
So it does sound...
Don't forget his age, though. Like, Almeida's also still young.
Yeah.
Like, so he still should be doing this a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, you can't be like, I think 3 weeks when some guys can do it. So like a guy like Tadej comes in, and then now everyone just expects everyone should be able to do it.
And especially in that team, I think that's our expectation. It's not even necessarily.
But I mean, today's job is to win. You know, whereas for these guys, exactly. But I mean, for these guys, they're not necessarily always there to win. You know? So I think sometimes it can be quite hard to kind of find that balance. So now I'm a support rider, and now I need to go for the win. You know, I mean, today's been conditioned, you know, to be the race winner. You know. And this is actually an interesting topic altogether, is that dynamic, how you get the right dynamic in a team, you know?
Yeah, I guess it's slightly easier when Tadej's on the team because there is no question who's the leader. Do you know what I mean, though? Like, in terms of management, you don't have to juggle anything. It's like, lads, we've got Tadej. Sorry, he's the race leader. You can take your chances where you get them, but you're supporting him, and that's that. So it does make it slightly easier. I feel like those riders in another team would have much more of a battle. I guess that's what we get in the other Grand Tours when Tadej isn't there.
I think they're all just fighting for that second spot. I just think they're trying to prove who's the better rider. I think, you know, if you look at the guy who's got it right in that team, two riders, I think, is obviously Tadej, because he's Tadej. The next one's Adam Yates. So Adam Yates is the support rider all the time, but he never has that pressure of winning, whereas João, Almeida, Ayuso, Soler, all these kind of riders, they're in that second tier under the bracket, but they're all trying to fight for that next leadership role. So it's very much the classic when they went to the Giro, they had Del Toro and Ayuso fighting out. I don't think it's necessarily so much to be, I want to win this race, but it's almost like I should be given leadership because I'm the better rider. And I think
that's an extra pressure, though, doesn't it? And we saw it at the Giro d'Italia with Juan Ayuso. That's your chance to lead a Grand Tour for UAE Team Emirates this year. It's a massive responsibility as well as opportunity. If you don't take that, it must be devastating, really, because when are you going to get it again?
And you find, like, some rise to the challenge. So they're being challenged by the younger riders, and they rise to the challenge. But some just can't, you know what I mean? Because they need all that attention on them. This is my Grand Tour. What are you doing here? You know, stepping on my toes.
But when you look at how Almeida won the Tour de Suisse, and that big breakaway went away on the first day. Gregoire was in the jersey for a long time, and he had to just chip away there. He was 3.5 minutes behind after day one. So they've made him a leader, but then he's given a 3.5 minute handicap away. And he has to chip away at that. So actually that just shows how strong mentally he is, because he could have gone in as the leader and then maybe like, day one, it's done. It's done. GC is finished now.
I thought the way he won it was really impressive.
He just chipped away every day, took the time bonuses, like still had work to do in the time trial. It still wasn't done, and he still had to go out there and race the mountain time trial to come into first place.
There's a lot of respect for that, actually, because I mean, to win it on the last day is actually perfect for the team, you know, because there's no pressure leading up to that last day, and then he took all of that responsibility on himself to deliver on the last day.
What did we make of Quinn Simmons, his stage victory?
Very Wout-esque, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, wasn't it? American Eagle landing. I quite like that.
Yeah.
No thoughts?
I mean, it's a good talking point. Right? That's what we need in cycling as well. Hey,
he stands out anyway, doesn't he?
Even without that.
Yeah. But yeah, it did make me think about George Hincapie's new plan for an American-focused team. And I love the idea. I feel like, I think he's a great person to lead it anyway, and a great person to have as a figurehead. But we were saying before we sat down to this table, I really believe for cycling, for any sport that wants to be globally, financially successful and sustainable, it needs a foothold in the United States. Still does. And that's been lacking, really, since, of course, the Lance years. And so to have an all-American team, it's not going to be an all-American team, but an American-focused team, I think is good for the sport.
Yeah, I think they definitely need to keep coming with a few more teams and build it. When you build it, that's where your talents are going to start coming through again. Because you also look at the amount of UCI race days in the Americas, and for the size of the country, it's like they've got 2 World Tour 1 days in Canada. There's the Maryland Classic is working really hard to come onto the calendar and kind of start to build. But actually for American riders growing up, where they're looking forward and saying, where do I go? What's my opportunity? Of course, the Tour de France, but that's a massive step between being a junior rider and the Tour de France. And I think this can reignite that fire a little bit in American cycling. That's going to attract, because George Hincapie is a name people remember, and he is going to attract people into the sport just from who he is and the experience that he has in the sport.
I mean, in terms of expanding fan base and expanding reach, did you all see the news of Lidl-Trek, Aleix Espargaro, the MotoGP rider, getting a shot at professional cycling? He's going to be racing the Tour of Austria, I think it is. And he, like, I don't know if you know much about him, but I've did a couple of seasons of MotoGPs. He's an absolute superstar and a huge cycling fan. So we would always bring his bike to race weekends and be out riding. And like, there is quite a crossover between the two sports. Mark Cavendish has been at quite a few MotoGP race weekends. One of his best friends, Cal Crutchlow, was really into cycling as well. So there is that crossover, but he's been a fanatic of the sport for such a long time. And Lidl-Trek then signed him to be a bit of an ambassador this year, which I thought was genius. And he's in his Leica and his Lidl-Trek gear and going on training camps. Now he's going to be racing in the Pro Peloton, which European. I absolutely love it. I love it. And I know it's gimmicky, but the lad has 1.3 million followers on Instagram, and that might not be everything. It's not what it's all about. However, if you can bring any of those fans into professional cycling, it's a brilliant thing.
I think it definitely is. There's no harm done with it. I just think, if he's a MotoGP rider, in his spare time, he's going out and training, great. And I'm sure he's a very
he is an elite athlete.
He's an elite athlete at MotoGP. Yeah. I think if you're trying to do two sports, I'm all for it, by the way, but I just think if he...
Are you really, Adam?
I only think if he's really that good, and he will be good because he's riding a race, of course, we'll Lidl-Trek just going to do it for a bit of fun. They'll get him in there, and I just think if he's super good, or just good, it's kind of like, how is that possible that he can do that and that? And I just...
You're worried that it sort of shows up the sport, but that it makes a bit of a mockery of it, I guess, a bit, are you?
Kind of a little bit, yeah. I think it's very like... I think it's great what they're doing. They're opening doors, as you said, to the world. But I also think it's kind of like...
You want him to get his head kicked in.
No, like, professionally speaking, get his arse handed to him every single day. No, but it's true though, isn't it? Like, make you realise how hard this sport is, because I'm sure his sport's hard.
Yeah.
But it's not as hard as cycling.
I think that...
No, but it's not. It's not. They've got an engine for one. Do you know what I mean?
On Pidcock is going to win the Queen stage on top of the sky views of Harry Euro.
Feels like a lifetime ago, doesn't it?
That was a lifetime ago.
5 for Georgie.
There's only metre to go. One more glove and victory. Here's Williams. Stevie Williams takes the biggest win of his career.
Great Britain's Anna Henderson now driving for home. Here comes Brennan Vision. Oh, he's got it. Oh, absolutely nailed it. Matthew Brennan, never say die. It's going to be quite a sprint between these two. Schmidt and Backstead. Zoe Backstead.
Looks like the British champion in that champion's jersey is going to take the lead.
Ethan Hayter, our new race leader.
Cat Ferguson goes down the right-hand side of the road, clattered over through the centre. Cat Ferguson does the double for Great Britain. And Simon Carr continues. EF Education Easy Post, 10th going to charge into this gap, try and nick it at the line. He wants first one of seconds, comes up on the inside right now, it's Onley on the throw. Oh my goodness, Onley just takes it. And Simon Yates sets off in.
Or Simon as well. My goodness, we talk about the glory days of British cycling being like early 10s, 2012 and around then, but it's quite a good time in British cycling, Matt, isn't it?
Yeah, we've had a lot of riders now that have really stepped up in the last few years, and I think doing a really nice job. Also now you're seeing more and more the young guys have made those steps and starting to get victories already this year. You see Matthew Brennan, kind of all his victories, Oscar with his victory the other day. I think all those younger guys are also pushing through now.
I think it's a particularly exciting period for the young riders, as you say. Like, I mean, Cat Ferguson.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I mean, she's incredible. Like,
I mean, yeah.
Winning already.
First year in elite and so dominant.
And the youngest to ever sign in the women's world tour as well.
She was even winning before she was professional. She won as a stagiaire in Tournai Bench, which is probably the best and hardest race in the world.
Yes.
But it is good. I think what's really exciting for me is the likes of Brennan. I think, I think through what...
And Oscar.
And Oscar, but I think, there's Oscar's side of things, which I think is a little bit more GC side.
Yeah.
And we've had that since Brad, Froome, Simon as well with the Vuelta and the Giro, Geraint. And I think it's been very much there. Cav has been... Geraint as well to an extent where we've just had them in that one-day sort of attacking racing. I think with Brennan, he's the next rider that can really shine as something other than the Tour de France and because within British cycling and within the UK, we have our big stars, but everyone that knows cycling only knows the Tour de France, and that's it. I think with Brennan, he can bring everything around what he does, and then if he gets to do the Tour de France, it'll explode him into what he is as a bike rider more, doing classics, doing the monuments. And I think it's not what the UK needs, but I just feel like everyone knows Bradley, Sir Chris Hoy as well. There's so much more to cycling where the general public don't know really.
I think that's the thing with him, because he can win a bunch sprint, but he can also, he's more versatile. Like you see in the VT there where he's winning in Catalonia on that stage. That is a hard finish. It's not a sprinter's finish, that. And he showed just how strong he was.
I just hope that these riders get that level of support that the likes of Brad and Chris Froome and Geraint had. You know, we're coming to the end of that era now with Geraint Thomas about to race his final Tour de France, which is mad. And really lucky, you know, British fans are really lucky to have all of this young talent coming through. And I just hope that they get the headlines that the generation before them got, because it's really, really important. You know, when you look back to the fanfare and the fuss and the excitement of 2012 in particular, and obviously the Olympics is a big part of that, there isn't that wider buy-in. You know, we're invested in cycling. Of course we are. We love it. It's our bread and butter. And I just hope that can spread beyond. You know, it's like, for example, the Giro d'Italia and Simon Yates. That's something that did resonate beyond, and you know, it was on BBC News, and you know, made it across to wider headlines and newspapers beyond the. Well, I was going to say beyond the ones that would usually cover cycling. No newspapers usually cover cycling. But it needs that bigger buy-in as well, I think. And I just hope for the sake of those riders and their careers and their longevity and what they can get out of the sport, that it gets a little bit of that fuss as well.
If you look at riders that really focus on what boosts the UK, you got the likes of Brad and Cav and all these guys that have done the Tour de France, the Olympics, one been hugely successful. One guy who has won, but he's really in front of all that media hype, which is he's not, well, I'd say he's a household name, is Pidcock. For his CV, what he's done on the road, it's a good CV, but Brennan's he's won a lot more. And like, if you were going to sign anyone at the minute, no offence to Tom, but I'd sign Brennan just because of what he's able to do.
No, maybe on the results, I'd sign Tom because of everything else that he brings as well.
Exactly. So I think that's the side of it where it's very British to be in that limelight for the races that you know. So for like Tom winning the Olympics, World Cyclocross champion, sponsored by Red Bull, all those kind of things. Boost him. But
I think that's the main thing. Until you don't become a household name until you win that Olympic medal. When you actually look back at the success of the riders that have gone before, British cycling was a huge part of what they did and where they become.
Yeah, you're right.
So they were using they were having partners coming in, people like Purcell at the time, and they were then giving endorsements, and you were on the front of a Purcell box or a Kellogg's box or whatever. And that's kind of now, you say the riders have more support than ever, because British Cycling did a fantastic job. But now also the pro teams are so interested in British riders that they're all supporting the Brits.
I don't even mean within the sport. I mean out with the sport. I mean the support of British fans and a wider audience more than anything.
And that's kind of my point, because then you need the interest from companies in the UK to highlight those riders, and that's kind of going to be because you can have an Instagram page that has 200,000 followers, that's great. There's still only 200,000 people. That's not a household name, really. And there we need to find a way, I think, across the country of how do we bring in the big brands that don't necessarily need to be sponsoring a team, but when they take on individual riders.
But just point out the restrictions that a lot of the teams place on riders, unfortunately, where personal endorsement deals, you know, they're clamping down more on that because they want a cohesive sort of image, or there's maybe conflict of interest, you know.
But unfortunately, a lot of cycling is still run by dinosaurs.
Also,
it's run by dinosaurs, and we're listening to the dinosaurs. And I would say to all the young riders out there, stop it. Stop listening to the dinosaurs. They'll still employ you because you're still brilliant.
I remember when
just take control, take matters into your own hands, create your own career, create your own platform, because if you're dropped anyway, at some stage, you might as well create a business for yourself. And if that business is just followers on social media, then you've at least created something, and you'll get more eyeballs into the sport.
I actually see like social media and sort of your personal brand development goes hand in hand with personal development, so with self-growth. You know, especially if you're working with younger riders, and maybe this is what agents could, or management companies could start doing, and maybe some are already, but if you're basically helping your rider to establish who they are, what their interests are, you know, and helping them build their brand and themselves through social media, you're actually helping them with like a self-empowerment project. Basically, you're helping them learn about themselves,
what they stand for, what they want to represent.
I think you think about it a different way than a lot of riders, and kind of you're also thinking in that respect for also your future. But I know
she's on the show.
I know for sure, knowing the amount of riders I know, if someone that worked in the communications department or commerce department went to the rider and said, "Can we sit down and can we talk about how you raise your brand?" they'd be like, "I don't want to do that," or the team's telling me I have to do that, or I'm being told. They also don't want to pay someone themselves to also support them. So I think you're quite forward thinking there, whereas a lot of riders maybe aren't ready to make that step.
To bring it back to British riders then, who are the exciting personalities to watch out for? Who's going to be the next? Well, who's going to be the next household name? Who's going to be the next Bradley, the next Geraint, the next Mark Cavendish?
Kat Ferguson.
Kat Ferguson, absolutely. Yeah. She is good, isn't she? She's got everything.
I mean, she's great, and her personality.
She's savvy. She has a look. She obviously has a talent. She has the support, the family support.
I mean, not that we should be celebrating drinking on the podium or anything, but it's just that.
She can neck a pint.
Exactly. She drinks the whole glass of champagne or a whole bottle. No, maybe not quite, but you know what I mean? It's that sort of fun. You know, she's having fun. You can see that when she's racing her bike, like the last stage of the Tour of Britain. How exciting was that? Ali Wollaston, Kat Ferguson going for those intermediate sprints. I mean,
I would say Zoe Backstead as well.
Yeah.
Zoe Backstead.
Already a Red Bull athlete. That brings a certain level of kudos and cool with it. And obviously she's got the cross-disciplinary element, being successful from such a young age. She's fun. She seems to really enjoy her bike. I think she really excites me, and I really hope that she becomes a real household name, like beyond cycling. What about the guys? What about the lads?
Matty Brennan for sure. I just think Matty Brennan's on the way up big time. After that, you've got the likes of Onley as well, who's a Matt's team. But I just think there's a certain cluster of riders really coming up within British cycling. But it's across the board, and it's really difficult. In like Stevie Williams, he won Flesh last year. He's nowhere this year because of an injury. So I think it's just that consistency as well. But I'd say the most exciting rider we've had in a long time is probably Matty Brennan. Like, since a rider like that who can win as much as Cav was winning in a year so far.
So Ashleigh, how are you doing? How are things with you after your horrendous crash last year and the long recovery from that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing well now. So I'm hoping that it's finally time to close that chapter and to move forward. It did take longer than I expected. You know, I've had really bad injuries in the past. I mean, from a horse riding accident and a head injury, in induced coma, almost brain damage. That was my final year at school, but I made actually a miraculously fast recovery from that, you know, and then breaking my ilium in 2016, you know, it took a bit of time, but I wouldn't say a full year. But this one has really taken a year. And it was actually quite interesting because in the beginning, you know, I had so much motivation last year. You know, I crashed at the worst possible time if you're talking about the Olympic Games and the Tour de France Femme. I just tried to look at the positives and focus.
After breaking your back.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it was literally 10 days after breaking my back that I was already back on Zwift, you know, riding on the indoor trainer with the back brace on because,
oh my God.
Yeah, it was it was a bad fracture. Most people would have had surgery, but I was actually quite lucky that the doctor at the time in Spain decided to go a more conservative route, which is better as an athlete because if you have back surgery, the recovery is actually much longer. So I accepted that, and the first 2 weeks were really, really scary because there was a piece, you know, my T10 literally shattered into many pieces. It was what they call a burst fracture. So from the high-speed, high-impact crash, it was in a sprint finish. I was already in the drops, like launching, you know, to make sure I didn't lose time. And someone slid out in front of me, and so I literally didn't brake, didn't really respond, just went over, hit the impact on my head, and that sort of folding of the back is what meant the two vertebrae above the other one, squashed it, and it just shattered into a whole lot of pieces. So it was quite dangerous or scary because there was a piece protruding into the spinal column. But I'm really, really lucky that I had no nervous damage. So I have actually made a very good recovery. But now in hindsight, I think back and I'm like, I was barking mad. You know, like in a back brace, like I'd spend the whole day lying on my bed because standing upright means that gravity is pulling down on the fracture. So the more you stand upright, the more height of the vertebra you lose. So I was told to lie on my bed, but I would make this exception just to go and ride my session on Zwift in the back brace and then go back and lie on my bed.
How long did you do how long were your sessions on Zwift when you had
I mean, obviously I increased incrementally. So it started by literally maybe half an hour and then went, and at first really upright. So sitting on a tax, the bike, the Neo bike, really upright like this. And then eventually went to my bike. And actually the position of being in the natural bike position was almost better because leaning over like that, you don't have the pull of gravity so much on the spine. I sailed through that, and I had all this motivation for the Olympics. I raced the Olympic Games prematurely. I mean, now I think to myself, I was so crazy, the risk I was taking. I raced with a back brace. So it wasn't as comprehensive as the proper medical back brace that I was in, but it was just in case I crashed. But the reason I used is that, well, what are the chances? The only way I would do real damage again is if I crashed exactly the same way. So I'm like, what are the chances I'm going to crash exactly the same, go over the handlebars, in a sprint? So that was what kind of gave me the peace of mind to do it. But then racing the Olympic Games and being on those cobbles, on the Sacré-Cœur, I had my back went into total spasm. All the muscles were like, what are you doing? So I obviously realized that the Tour de France femme avec Zwift was too much. So I backed down. In that moment was when I really properly grew up, as a rider, and I realized, why? I have the rest of my life ahead of me, and I want to go and race the Tour de France femme.
It's a great race.
Yeah, it's a great race. Don't get me wrong, it is a great race, but I thought there's other ways that I can be involved, and that's what I think Zwift are doing so amazingly is by creating this watch the fun movement, So I got straight in touch with Zwift. I said, I'm happy to host some of your watch party rides, and that's how I kind of stayed involved. I did a podcast with Lance Armstrong at the time, So, I found my way of being involved, and that's the beauty of, the Watch the Fun's movement, is you don't only have to be racing to be involved.
Were you 100% sure there that you wouldn't do more damage?
So I had a few conversations with a couple of people, but there was no guarantee, obviously.
Because it's your back and it's the rest of your life.
Yeah. I mean, wearing a back brace, like it was a really comprehensive back brace, so that's just a whole new story, riding on Zwift with this really, like I sweated crazily. I had to have two braces so that afterwards I could put the other one on, otherwise so that the other one could be washed. Yeah, to explain to you guys the madness, it's actually difficult to explain it, but I suppose there was an element of sanity in it. I mean, I was really nervous in the beginning. I didn't even take the back brace off to sleep, although the doctor at the hospital said I could. I was afraid, well, if I need to go to the loo in the night and I'm not wearing my back brace, what could happen? So I literally slept in it, for a good 2 or 3 weeks before I took it off. So I had conversations. There were obviously different opinions. My husband, his brother is a doctor and our brother-in-law, so his sister's husband is also a doctor. So I was talking to both of them. One is a radiologist and one's more sort of general medicine. The general medicine, he was like, no damn way, like, tell Ashleigh to stop. She's not racing the Olympic Games, And then the radiologist was like, well, okay. He was looking at my scans all the time, like seeing the progress. He was like, well, I suppose if she's wearing the back brace, like, as long as she's not doing too much and she's...
So you're picking the opinion that suits you.
So I was picking the one that suits me. And then also having spoken to a teammate, Maria Benito, who had also fractured her vertebra the year before. We discussed, what are the chances, So it was a lot of sort of my own decision making, and my husband knows I'm crazy, so somehow you just let me do it.
If you were speaking to your younger self who had that crash, what would you say?
I mean, I'm always pro, I'm a motivated, ambitious person, so I'd never want to take that away from the younger version of myself or anyone else who is like me. So, but you do need to think about your well-being, and I think that's something that we don't think about enough as pro riders. We're just thinking about riding results, keeping our spot on the team, keeping our relevance, and that's why I suppose through this whole process, my whole thinking has evolved to the fact that we should be developing more holistic, people and environments where
and encouraging that way of thinking, it's more of the culture.
And rewarding it
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
So, and that's why I love that you brought up the MotoGP rider that's now, involved with Lidl-Trek, because we need to start celebrating the following that, there could be riders that maybe don't perform at their best. And I'm also one to have hated on this before, I just see your eyes. Like where, what I really hated in the first part of my career as a female pro cyclist was women using their sexuality, riders using their sexuality to gain favor and following. And that
I tried that. Really tried.
But I think that we do need to start looking at the bigger picture around, the people, the stories, who they are, helping riders, young riders build their own brand, their own interests, so that when the injury happens,
racing isn't the only thing they've got.
Exactly. They can sort of, okay, well, let me focus more on my YouTube videos and share my recovery process with everybody rather than hammering to get back as quickly as possible. And it happens too much. I mean, we've seen it with Annemiek van Vleuten, breaking her wrist and still, racing with a brace on, or breaking her pelvis and back racing in a month, So, and it's celebrated. It's like, I think one Tour of Flanders, she dislocated her shoulder and she got back on the bike and still finished fourth or something like this. And that's celebrated. Like, you're a hero,
Yeah.
And it's hard not to celebrate that because it is an incredible feat of resilience and mental fortitude that most of us can't comprehend. So it's hard not to lionize that in some way. But the danger is when you glorify it too much over and above the rider actually recovering.
It means the next rider that crashes feels like they have to do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing, like with the stories around concussion at the moment.
Yeah.
Like when for us as in our team, we have a concussion protocol. So as soon as a rider crashes, we're making the assessment, and we've all got a card where we know, okay, this is what you need to do, and we're not going to take a chance.
Yeah.
Like, I pulled Romain Bardet out the Tour 2 years ago, and it was my decision. Just by the way he stood up, I was like, no.
Yeah.
And obviously a race like the Tour de France, the whole world is watching, and then you get back in the car and you think, did I make the right decision?
Yeah.
Like if he's ultimately it was, But like if he'd been full of energy at the finish and all, like everyone would have been like, what were you?
Well, yeah.
But like you don't want to take that chance, because then the next person thinks, I've got to do it, I've got to do it, I've got to do it. And
somebody has to step in and override the rider sometimes to look after them.
Well, he wanted to carry on.
Of course, he's a racer, he's a winner.
And you go in the ambulance now and you just take your time, and then and he came back and he was ready for the Vuelta because we so quickly got him in the dark room. We took all the pressure out, no screens, and then you can recover quite quick. When he finishes that stage, then the process just goes longer. And I think that's where we do celebrate like great feats, which is good, but we also have to think about the younger generation coming through and also their life. And it's a.
But this is an interesting point, really, because like, let's say, okay, I crash, I break my back, and the team like shifts a little bit. They focus, okay, well, this is a really good story. Like, let's tell the story, know. And I mean, I'm not criticizing my current team. I'm just saying, like, this isn't a thought process that anyone enters into in pro cycling. It's like, okay, Ashleigh might not be ready to do the Olympic Games,
but she's still an asset on the team.
Exactly. But let's tell the story, because this is something someone might be able to relate to. Because in real life, people aren't always winning. Yeah, they're having ups and downs in everybody's life, So maybe if they had to change the focus, or I changed the focus to sort of sharing the story, being relevant while I'm still recovering from injury, then maybe, I don't know, maybe that changes the thinking as well.
But so many people have learned from it as well.
Yeah, but as an athlete, we're just thinking, I need to be back to race. I need to be back to race because that's who I am. I'm a bike racer, And I think that's the biggest mistake of pro sport, is that I'm not, cycling is not who I am, it's what I do, and that's something that we need to try and encourage younger riders to grasp.
Good motto. I like it. Have you seen the Visma Lease bike lineup and the Tour de France? Sweet mother of all things holy, it's insane. If you look at that team in isolation, I'm sorry, it's hard to beat that, isn't it?
To be fair, they played that card to perfection at the Giro, right? Hey? So, I mean, that was quite an incredible performance, the way they pulled that off. So maybe they've learned from that experience and they're thinking, you know, that's what they need to bring into the Tour. Of course, they have their standouts for the yellow jersey, but they, you know, they have different strategies they can play out with such a strong team. I think it's
such a team for that first week in particular, isn't it? You know, I just feel like they could create utter carnage with the size of the riders they've got as well.
That could be where they land the blows to UAE in that first week, because it can be chaos.
Yeah.
The weather,
They'll probably want a bit of
is going to be okay, but when it's not, then it is going to be carnage.
Do you know the only thing I think, if UAE had a GC rider that wasn't Tadej and someone like Jonas, who's heavily dependent on his team, I think it would make a massive difference. But you look at Tadej.
Yeah, he just follows everything.
He can follow everything. Like, you look at him in the classics, like, as much as the team's important, he needs it in there for support. If they start shooting around and sending riders off the front,
it's very independent.
all that Tadej has to do is follow Jonas. So all the other attacks.
I mean, he is only human and he is subject to the same whims of lady luck as everybody else. And, you know, we are talking about fortune and not wishing misfortune on anyone. But it's hard to see unless it's injury or illness or something unfortunate to Tadej. It is difficult to see what they're going to be able to do. However, they probably have the best team to be able to do it. And to try to create a bit of chaos, which is, you know, sowing some chaos amongst the UAE team is probably as good a strategy as they can hope for.
I think UAE could take it two ways with this. They could either I think Visma could really try to put them in the red. So they really try to put the team under pressure and they could waste so much energy. Or they could just say, look, we're going to be under pressure, take it easy. Just take it easy, sit back. Like, don't stress too much. But I know you're saying, no, UAE. I think Visma will ultimately try, because that's what the team I think with UAE, we can say, Tadej's good. We just need 2 or 3 riders around him, maximum. After that, don't go and kill yourselves. You've got a heavy final couple of weeks.
It's not the way they like to race.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, and I think that's where, for me, looking at what we're going to do in the Tour, if UAE have the jersey,
just written down this morning.
Then if UAE have the jersey, it's always more difficult for the breakaway, because Tadej likes to race every day. Whereas when Visma have the jersey, then you think, there's a bit more chance for the breakaway and to go.
So you want Visma to have the jersey.
When they can hold it for a while, then you have the space. And I think what they did really well in the Giro, and I was also, I was talking to Mark Reeve about it afterwards, is you didn't see them. Really. I mean, they won stages, so of course you saw them there, and they did a good job with those stages. But in terms of GC,
they were under the radar.
And Simon just floated for the whole time, and kind of like UAE were racing for everything, for every second. And that can become their undoing a little bit when they do that. Whereas I think...
Or it can, if it's not Tadej Pogacar.
Yeah.
That's the problem that the rest of the peloton has. It's Tadej.
But you only also need one bad day.
And
then you...
And he is only human.
Exactly.
He doesn't look it, but apparently...
He's had it in the past.
Yeah.
But that's a good point, though, because, you know, I mean, Visma are showing up with a super strong team. So they have 2 strategies. They either go like all in to create the chaos and to force UAE to make mistakes, which would be super exciting. But then at the same time, you just summed it up with the Giro. I mean, Simon was just kind of thereabouts, like off people's minds. And then they just executed one day to absolute perfection.
They can't do that with Jonas, though, can they? But he's never going to be under the radar.
But I think what they'll do also, and what they do well, is like, if they'll have their tactic and say, okay, we go for GC today. This is a GC day for us, but that doesn't necessarily mean they have to race for the stage. So they'll look at the composition of the breakaway and they'll think, right, it's going to cost us too much to bring that breakaway back in terms of what it does to our team. So we're going to let the breakaway go. Then we're going to race the last climb and Jonas can take his time. Whereas UAE's approach is more, we want to race for GC today, but we want to race for the stage, because that opens everyone up, because then you get everyone thinking, I can win. And then it makes the race a little bit more open. Whereas they'll just they don't need to win the stages. They just want the yellow in Paris. And that's all they care about.
Yeah. Speaking of Grand Tours to look forward to and team announcements, SC Worx have announced their team for the Giro, haven't they?
Yeah.
We've got Lorena, we've got Lotte, we've got Anna van der Breggen, amongst others. I mean, it's quite the team, isn't it?
Yeah, it's an interesting strategy actually, because I would say it's a dress rehearsal or a training camp for the Tour. They've almost said this basically on their social media, which is a point for discussion really, because I mean, I'm going to be racing at the Giro.
Explain what they've said on their social media then for anybody who missed it.
They said that there's no GC ambition, so they're going to the Tour with no GC ambition. So I mean, there is a strategy. Yeah, exactly.
I hope it's.
I mean,
I hope it's BS.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a cover-up, like you say. I mean, they go there, they see what happens. But as someone who is racing the Giro with GC ambitions, and you have that lineup, I mean, if they're going there for stage wins, it can completely blow the race up, you know, because, for example, if Anna goes or if Lotte goes, for sure the GC riders like myself can't let her go.
Yeah.
You have to follow.
So, yeah, it makes it a little bit tougher for the likes of myself, really, to read this racing. But having said that, I have a strong team, so we have some cards to play as well. But yeah, I think it's a little bit arrogant.
I wanted to ask you about that, right? Because what do you make of the fact that they have said we're not going with GC ambitions, because they have two of the premium GC riders in the women's peloton? Because they haven't gone and said we're going for stage wins. That would be a positive way of approaching it. Instead, they've said we're not going for GC. From the outside, that feels a little bit disrespectful, I would say, to the race and to the rest of the peloton. Whereas if they'd said we're going for stage wins, then you think, oh, yeah,
I've raced for SD Worx, so just to give some some background insight. So, okay, there's two ways. Like, I definitely think that the Giro is good preparation for the Tour.
Of course.
Yeah, I mean, that would be my strategy as well. Like, you can't replicate that kind of training. You know, no matter where you go, what else should you do? You're never going to replicate it. So it really is the perfect preparation for the Tour. We have 2-week gap in between, which is just enough to recover. So that's all good. Like, I totally respect that. There's more than one team doing that. But I think what they're actually trying to do is they're trying to figure out their pecking order. So if I know from racing on the SD Worx team, there would always be a pecking order. So plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D, you know, like they could win with, you could usually...
Yeah. No, but they run out of letters in the alphabet.
This is exactly how it worked. And this is why, for example, at the Strade Bianche, where you had Kopecky and Demi sprinting each other, it's because I was on the team.
Plan A and B collide.
No, exactly. Because so plan A would have been Kopecky, because I was on the team with the same strategy. So Kopecky was plan A, then Demi would be plan B, and then let's say I would be plan C. So then how that works is plan C has to go the earliest, you know. Yeah. Okay, so let's say plan D. Plan D is the breakaway, the first breakaway. Okay, plan C is entering into the final, you know, and that was often my card. And then Demi would be plan B, which is like in the final, but, you know, not too far away. And then Lotte is the last card, the A card. So if we come to the sprint, you know. So for example, Demi, all respect to her, she played her card, she got away, she was solo. So then that should usually be your ticket on SD Worx. So now I'm solo, I did what I needed to do, the race is mine. But then Lotte crossed over, right? So, and I know for a fact, just from background and talking to people, that there was no discussion as they were going up the final climb as to who was the leader.
Finally, we're getting intel into this race. I love it.
So Demi thought, well, I went first, I played my card first, so I'm the winner today. I'm going for it. And Lotte thinks, well, I'm plan A, and I crossed over, so I'm going for the win today. So do you see how that happened?
Yeah.
That's why they sprinted each other, and Demi's never going to step down, you know, neither is Lotte. So this is what I think they're doing in the Giro. They're not 100% sure of Lotte because, I mean, we all know she hasn't had the best start to the year. You know, she's also been putting some stuff out there that she's been struggling. I think she had a knee issue in the off season, and she's actually taken it quite hard, all the criticism from the outside. So they've sent them all to altitude. They're all on altitude camp, and they're going to go to the Giro to see what plan A, B, and C, and D is for the Tour. So I think it's a bit of a test, you know, to sort of see between Anna and Kopecky, what's our plan A and B at the Tour.
Yeah. Makes it all so much more interesting, doesn't it?
Danny Stam is paid a lot of money to technically do nothing.
You can't say that.
Plan A, plan B come together. I haven't got a plan anymore. Like, what the heck? Come off it. You can't have, like, it's ridiculous.
It's actually quite a good point because on
Was it not Anna in the car that day? Anna van der Breggen?
She was with Danny.
With Danny, okay. So you were going to say it's a good point because?
Because actually just, you know, from past experience. I'm not sure what they're doing now, so I don't want to be, you know, hated for what I say now. But beforehand, when I was on the SD Worx team, as you say, there wasn't a lot of work to be done, you know, like we just sat the team meeting, there was no like, this is the course, this is the pinch point, this is the that. All the riders basically, we did that ourselves. We came to the meeting and it was literally like, plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D, you know, have fun, you know, make my life exciting.
Yeah. What have you got to win?
Exactly. Whereas going to the AG Insurance team, and especially with Savas Knaven coming in or having his influence coming from Ineos, it was incredible how professional. It was like night and day. You know, you'd go now in our debriefs, we have like a 20-slide PowerPoint presentation. Sometimes, exactly, where everything is detailed to the last, you know, millimeter. So yeah, it's very interesting to compare.
Fascinating.